Picture this for a second. You are sitting quietly in your home, maybe you are reading or just trying to enjoy a rare moment of peace on a Saturday afternoon.
Sounds like a pretty perfect weekend, honestly.
Right. But then suddenly you hear it. It is this frantic scraping, scratching sound.
The absolute worst sound to hear in a quiet house.
Exactly. And it sounds incredibly close, like you realize it's coming directly from inside your bathroom exhaust fan.
Oh, man.
Yeah, or maybe you hear it echoing down the metal ductwork of your dryer vent. It just feels like an invasion of your personal sanctuary.
It really does. It completely ruins the piece.
You probably just want to grab a broom handle and start banging on the ceiling. But before you do, you really need to understand that the scratching is not just a nuisance. That tiny plastic vent on your roof is actually the front line of a bizarre intersection between urban sprawl, severe biohazards, and surprisingly strict federal laws.
Yeah, it is a complete paradigm shift for most homeowners. I mean, we are all conditioned to think of birds as entirely outdoor creatures,
Right.
like they belong in the trees.
Of course. That is where birds live.
Well, historically, yes. But certain species of birds are no longer wild in the traditional sense. They have completely adapted their behavior, their nesting habits, and really their entire life cycle to treat human architecture as their natural preferred habitat.
Which is wild to think about. And understanding this behavior transforms how you look at the structure of your own home. By the end of this deep dive, you are going to see hidden vulnerabilities sitting in plain sight on your roof that you have probably walked past, 1,000 times.
Absolutely. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it.
Right. So to understand how these birds are getting in, we first have to look at the environmental pressure that is physically driving them toward our houses in the first place. And our source material today focuses on the area of Crosby, Texas, which provides the perfect lens for this.
Yeah, Crosby is a really fascinating case study in this kind of environmental intersection. It sits right along the eastern edge of Harris County, heavily influenced by the San Jacinto River corridor.
Right, so you have a lot of nature right up against the neighborhoods.
Exactly. Geographically, you have extremely dense tree cover, you have these winding creek drainages, and that natural landscape creates a constant high-pressure wildlife environment. The animal populations out there are robust and highly active.
And then you just plop a human neighborhood right in the middle of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because Crosby has a lot of older ranch-style homes and wood-framed construction pressing directly up against those heavily wooded lots.
Which creates a massive unintended opportunity. I mean, birds are constantly searching for a dry, sheltered, predator-free spot to raise their young. And a modern house is essentially a fortress covered in perfect, pre-built nesting cavities.
Like what, specifically?
We have dryer vents, bathroom exhaust fans, range hood vents from the kitchen, open soffits, and roof vents.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because there is a massive structural vulnerability that most of us just accept as standard home building. I am talking about the builder-grade plastic flap covers on exterior vents.
Oh, yeah. The classic plastic louvers.
Right. I have these on my own house. They're those cheap, lightweight plastic flaps that just sort of flutter open when the air blows out and then fall closed.
They are incredibly common.
But they seem totally useless as a physical barrier. So these builder-grade vents are basically like leaving a neon vacancy sign on a luxury hotel for birds.
That is a great way to put it.
But wait, if these birds live right there by the dense woods of the San Jacinto River, why aren't they just building nests in the trees like normal birds? I mean, why go through the trouble of forcing their way past a plastic flap into a metal tube?
What's fascinating here is the specific biology of the primary culprits. We were talking heavily about house sparrows and European starlings. Yeah. These are introduced species, meaning they are not originally native to North America. Over generations, they have evolved to become highly adapted to living inside human structures. To a starling, a tree is dangerous.
Wait, a tree is dangerous to a bird?
For these birds, yeah. It is exposed to predators, to high winds, to driving rain. But a bathroom vent, that is a climate-controlled, steel-reinforced cave.
Wow, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. That lightweight plastic flap offers absolutely zero resistance to a motivated sparrow. They will push right past it, or even wedge a nest perfectly behind the louvers so it stays permanently propped open.
That is surprisingly clever.
It really is. And because these are highly aggressive, opportunistic birds, once a pair establishes a nest in an unsealed vent, that exact same architectural opening gets reused year after year.
It is a successful real estate investment for them. They found the luxury suite, and they are never giving it up. But here's the problem. Because these birds are hardwired to return to these specific vents annually, the sheer volume of debris they bring with them turns a minor scratching sound into a severe structural crisis, right?
A massive crisis. Let's look at the mechanics of a dryer vent. Birds naturally gather dry grass, feathers, dead leaves, and random twigs to build these nests.
Right.
But a dryer vent's sole purpose is to forcefully exhaust hot, moist air from a heating element.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I am trying to visualize this. A dryer vent blasts out hot air at incredibly high speeds. It feels like a mini leaf blower when you stand outside next to it.
It does.
How on earth are these birds physically building a fragile nest of grass against that kind of outward force without the whole thing just blowing away into the yard?
It comes down to their aggressive nesting behavior and just incredible persistence. They are not flying in while the dryer is running.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. The moment the appliance stops, they go to work frantically. They take the thickest, sturdiest twigs and foundational materials and intentionally wedge them deep into the internal ridges of the metal ductwork.
So they build a frame first.
Exactly. They create a structural anchor. From there, they rapidly weave the dry grass and leaves into that anchor. By the time you do your next load of laundry and the air kicks on, that outward pressure doesn't blow the nest out.
It doesn't.
No, it actually compresses the woven material against the wedged twigs, packing it tighter and tighter until it forms a solid, unmovable plug.
Wait, dryer vents exhaust heat at well over 100 degrees. If they are packing compressed dry leaves and grass directly into that airflow, that is literally kindling in a furnace.
It is. It is actually one of the leading causes of preventable structural fires. The blockage forces the dryer's heating element to overwork, lint builds up behind the nest, and the entire system can ignite.
That is terrifying.
And the physics turn even more dangerous if you have a gas-powered dryer. In a completely sealed duct, that massive blockage prevents the exhaust from escaping outside. The pressure builds, and it can force carbon monoxide to backdraft directly into your laundry room and living space.
Carbon monoxide from a bird's nest. I mean, we always think of carbon monoxide leaks coming from a faulty furnace or a car left running in a garage, not a clogged exhaust pipe.
Yeah, it is a hidden danger most people never consider.
Yeah.
And they pull this same architectural takeover in chimneys, too.
Right, because an open chimney flue without a functioning cap is essentially a massive vertical nesting cavity.
Exactly. And the chimney scenario presents a unique chemical problem, especially in the Crosby and wider Houston area.
Because of the weather?
Yes. You have to factor in that famous Houston humidity.
Yeah.
The birds drop an enormous amount of nesting material down the vertical shaft. Over time, the intense airborne moisture mixes with the dry grass, the leaves, and the bird droppings.
Oh, gross.
Very gross. That mixture chemically breaks down and compresses into a damp, incredibly heavy mass. It essentially turns into a biological concrete at the base of the flue.
Biological concrete? That sounds impossible to clean.
It completely prevents the chimney from drafting smoke out of the house, and it absolutely does not break down or decompose easily on its own.
Which introduces the hidden biological hazard. Because this isn't just dry grass sitting in the ductwork or the chimney. Wherever you have a large accumulation of roosting birds, you have a massive accumulation of droppings.
And those droppings harbor Histoplasma capsulatum.
Which is what exactly?
It is a microscopic fungus.
Yeah.
When the droppings dry out, especially in a hot, enclosed space like an attic or a sealed vent, the fungus produces microscopic spores.
Okay, so you definitely do not want to be breathing that in.
Definitely not. If a homeowner goes in and disturbs that dust, say, by trying to sweep it out or pull it down with a rake, those spores become aerosolized. When inhaled, they cause a severe respiratory illness called histoplasmosis.
Wow.
This is why a large accumulation of bird waste cannot be treated as a simple Saturday morning cleaning chore. It is a full-blown biohazard contamination.
So it is not a DIY job?
Not at all. The professionals who remediate these spaces have to wear full personal protective equipment, including specialized respirators, just to safely remove the material without spreading the spores through the home's HVAC system.
So hearing all of this, the intense fire risks, the threat of carbon monoxide, the toxic airborne fungal spores, a homeowner's immediate, completely understandable reaction is to grab a ladder, climb up to the roof, and just rip the nest out with their bare hands to protect their family.
Sure, it is a natural instinct.
But taking that DIY approach could trigger an incredibly expensive, potentially criminal legal nightmare.
Yes, the situation shifts instantly from biology and home maintenance into an avian legal minefield.
An avian legal minefield.
Yeah, because under federal law, not all birds are treated equally. Homeowners assume a bird is a bird, but the species dictates exactly what you are legally allowed to do to your own house.
Let's break down that critical distinction. On one side, you have the invasive species. We mentioned the house sparrows and European starlings earlier.
Right.
Because they are introduced species from Europe, they are highly adaptive, they aggressively displace native birds from their habitats, and crucially, they are completely unprotected by federal law.
The primary legislation protecting wildlife in the United States is the Migratory Bird Treaty Act.
Okay.
And that law does not apply to sparrows or starlings. Because they are an invasive ecological threat that causes severe structural damage, you do not need a federal permit to remove their nests, clear out your vents, or seal up the openings.
Which is fortunate because the nesting habits of sparrows in the Houston area are relentless. The source material notes they start nesting as early as February.
Yeah, they get a very early start.
And they don't just lay one set of eggs in the spring and move on. They run multiple clutches of eggs consecutively all through the spring, summer. There is practically no off-season for a sparrow.
No, they're a constant pressure.
But on the exact opposite side of the legal spectrum, you have the great-tailed grackle.
Yeah, the grackle completely flips the script. Great-tailed grackles are native to Texas. You see them roosting in massive, incredibly noisy flocks in trees all across eastern Harris County.
Oh, I know the ones. They create massive messes in parking lots and residential properties.
Exactly. And occasionally, if a home has a large gap in a wooden soffit or an open attic access point, a grackle will move inside.
And because they are a native species, they are strictly protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act.
That federal protection is comprehensive and absolute. It covers the adult birds, their feathers, their eggs, and their active nests.
Wow.
Yeah, it is a federal crime to trap, kill, or physically disturb an active grackle nest without a specific, highly regulated permit from the government.
So you really cannot touch them.
No. The only legal, practical solution for dealing with grackles is proactive exclusion, meaning you have to install deterrents and physically seal the structure before they ever decide to establish a nest.
So, what does this all mean? If an invasive European starling is packing dry grass into my dryer vent, I can have them legally evicted and the nest destroyed by noon. But if a native great-tailed grackle decides my open soffit looks like a nice place to raise a family, I suddenly need to consult the federal government before I can repair my own roof.
It sounds extreme, I know.
That feels wild.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the legal framework makes historical sense. The Migratory Bird Treaty Act was passed in the early 1900s to prevent the wholesale slaughter and extinction of native bird populations by commercial plume hunters.
Okay, so it is not just random bureaucracy.
Right. The law isn't designed to punish suburban homeowners. It exists to maintain the incredibly fragile ecological balance of native species.
That makes sense.
But this exact legal minefield is precisely why the DIY approach is so dangerous. If you climb up a ladder, tear down a nest to prevent a fire, and you accidentally misidentify a protected grackle egg for an unprotected starling egg, you've just committed a federal offense.
Oh, wow. You really have to know the exact biological species before you take any physical action.
Absolutely. You cannot guess.
So, if the law prohibits you from touching a native bird's nest, and the biology of the invasive bird guarantees they will aggressively rebuild in your exhaust fan the moment you turn your back, a reactive DIY removal is basically off the table.
100% off the table.
You are forced to shift your strategy from reactive removal to proactive structural defense. And because you have to navigate complex federal laws, severe biohazards, and the physical architecture of a house, you absolutely cannot just call a standard bug exterminator. You need a highly specialized wildlife operation.
Yes.
And for Crosby and the eastern Harris County area, that level of specialization is found in operations like the Critter Team.
Right, because there is a very hard line between pest control and wildlife control. Pest control companies are licensed to spray chemicals for insects and set traps for standard rodents.
Mice and roaches, basically.
Exactly. They are generally not licensed, trained, or legally equipped to navigate federal migratory bird laws.
That is a huge distinction.
It is. And more importantly, they typically do not carry the specialized engineering certifications required to permanently modify the exterior architecture of a home to exclude wildlife.
Which brings us to the Critter Team. They are based out of Humble and have been serving the area since 2015. It is a veteran-owned company under Mike Garrett, and they operate on a strict in-house model.
The in-house part is crucial.
Right, because they don't use subcontractors. The crew that arrives on your property is composed entirely of their own highly trained employees, and they're available 204/7.
And their process is fascinating because it illustrates how wildlife control mechanically works. It is essentially a four-step architectural defense strategy. You don't just point to the vent and say, fix that.
Yeah, you can't just slap a Band-Aid on it.
Exactly. The first step is a massive whole home inspection. They systematically walk the exterior, analyzing the roofline, the walls, the gable vents, the eave gaps, and every single architectural penetration point.
Why the whole house if the nest is just in one vent?
Because if you just rip the nest out of one exhaust fan and seal it, but there is an undetected gap in the wooden soffit 3 feet away, the displaced birds will simply move next door. You have to locate every potential vulnerability simultaneously.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So the next phase is humane removal. They don't use poisons or kill traps. Once the birds are out, you hit the most critical phase of the operation.
The clean out.
Yes, 100% removal of all nesting material. They don't just lock the bird outside and leave the old nest decaying in the metal duct.
Which is what a lot of DIYers do.
Right, and we already know leaving the nest maintains that severe fire hazard and allows the histoplasmosis spores to incubate. But there is a hidden biological mechanism at play here, too.
The scent.
Yes. An abandoned nest is essentially a biological GPS beacon.
That is a brilliant way to describe it. Birds have incredibly strong homing instincts. If a homeowner just slaps a new plastic vent cover on without chemically cleaning and completely emptying the metal ductwork inside, they're leaving a massive pheromone and scent signal.
A homing signal for the birds.
Exactly. That signal broadcasts to the exact same birds, or the next flock passing through the San Jacinto River corridor, that this vent is a proven safe habitat. They will smell that old nest and obsessively attack the new plastic flap until they break through.
That is wild.
So complete surgical removal and sanitization is a mandatory and mechanical step to break the nesting cycle.
Which brings us to the final permanent defense exclusion. This involves installing sturdy, fabricated metal covers, proper chimney caps, and heavy-duty steel mesh. And the ultimate goal for the aesthetics of the home is to make the house look like they were never there.
And this raises an important question about the actual materials being used on the house.
Right.
The Critter Team technicians hold very specific credentials. They are bird barrier certified installers and carry Ridge Guard certification.
So it is not just random wire mesh from the hardware store.
No, that represents actual engineering knowledge, not just marketing jargon. Effective structural exclusion requires a technician to balance two opposing forces.
What are those forces?
First, you have to understand the biomechanics of the animal. How much physical force a starling can exert with its beak, or exactly how small of a gap a sparrow can compress its skeleton to squeeze through.
Right, you have to know your enemy.
Exactly. But second, you have to understand the cubic feet per minute airflow requirements of the building's HVAC system.
Ah, I see. Because if you don't understand the engineering and you just staple a piece of dense wire mesh over a bathroom exhaust fan to keep the birds out, you restrict the airflow so much that the fan motor burns out.
Yes, or you create a massive lint trap on a dryer vent.
Which defeats the whole purpose of preventing a fire.
Precisely. The certification proves they know how to match the exact gauge of heavy-duty steel to the specific invasive species while maintaining the precise airflow dynamics of the home's architecture.
It is a phenomenal example of how deeply interconnected our modern suburban infrastructure is with the relentless adaptability of the natural world.
It really is. It is a constant arms race.
So, here's my challenge to you today. Next time you pull into your driveway, before you walk inside, take a moment and just look up. Look at your roof vents. Look closely at your chimney cap.
Give it a good inspection.
Because what looks like a tiny, harmless plastic flap fluttering in the wind might actually be an open front door for an invasive roommate. And it leaves me with this final lingering thought to ponder.
What was that?
Well, if invasive birds like sparrows and starlings have already perfectly adapted to treat our modern HVAC exhaust vents and structural chimneys as their primary preferred habitats, how will wildlife continue to evolve alongside human architecture?
That is a great question.
Are our modern suburban homes accidentally serving as giant incubators, breeding new super adapter species? And if so, what will the human-wildlife cohabitation of the future actually look like? Because the next time you hear that frantic scratching echoing down your bathroom fan, you have to wonder who is really lifting to who.